All right, what's up, everyone? It tells me that we are live as of a few seconds ago. So, like I say every week, I will take its word for it, and it's an exercise in trust. So, welcome back. If you're watching this for the first time, thank you for being here. If you're watching this for the past few years, thank you for being so committed to this. It is, let's see, October 16th of 2021. And as we say every week, how did it get so late so soon? But I'm really grateful to be here for another week and got some new content. So if you've been following me or watching me for a little bit, just know that I am bringing some new stuff today. So let's see how that goes. A quick introduction of myself as people start to trickle on. My name is Param. I do this each and every single Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Let's see, I got a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. I'm a licensed addictions counselor. I'm also clean and sober, about 13 years, a little bit over 13 years. And I'm also a high school basketball coach. We just had our yearbook pictures last week. We had our tip-off dinner on Thursday. And next Friday, we have our first Midnight Madness practice. So I'm excited for that. And we'll go from there. So good morning, everyone that said hi. We got Jim, we got Debbie, we got Lynn. Thank you for being here. And this one is, obviously, this is the Family Education and Support Program. However, sometimes I like to do a talk with the main intention of being able to provide some insight and awareness to the family members about the internal processes that their loved ones through the sobriety and recovery process may go through, okay? Now, can these also apply to family members? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's family members that can go through the exact same stuff I'm talking about. But sometimes if addiction is a foreign thing to you, if you're not familiar with it on a personal level, if you're not familiar with it on a professional level, it's a very foreign and odd thing to experience. And this talk is going to help you understand some of the internal workings and phenomena that go through people in the recovery process. So with the intention of providing education, just the more we know, as long as it's real, valid information based on truth, based on facts, the more you know, the more you're able to show up and have a better understanding of what it is you're experiencing. So the title of this talk is 12 Fears of Sobriety That Will Ruin Your Recovery, oftentimes before it even happens. So a lot of people's loved ones go through the recovery process. What's up, St. John? They go through the recovery process, and there are certain fears about sobriety they experience. Some are physical, some are psychological, some are emotional, that prevent them from ever achieving recovery because of that fear of sobriety is so in your face. So I'm going to go through 12 of them with you guys today. Hopefully you find some value in the information presented. I think you will. I was really inspired making this last night, and I knew that it was going to go off really well. I did this with the program participants this morning. They all liked it. You know, I can't say they loved it, but they liked it. And sometimes Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, if you got a group of people listening to this and they just say they like it, is good enough. So here we go. Let's go through this list together. Number one, the number one fear of sobriety that can ruin recovery is that everything is going to change. People come through when people want to get clean and sober, one of the fears they have is that everything's going to change, right? And they're absolutely right. They're absolutely right. Everything's going to change. Everything needs to change. I've been on record saying this numerous times. Your new life will cost you your old life. Are you willing to pay that price? Your new life is going to cost you your old life. And what is the fear about everything changing? Well, man, the fear of the unknown. The fear of the unknown. That's scary for some people because why? Even if addiction, even if alcoholism is painful and it sucks, which we know it is, it's still familiar to people. Do you know that people choose familiarity over discomfort over and over and over again? That's why people have a hard time changing, because they're committed to what's familiar, because it's safe. So when people come through, yeah, now what, Jim? Good. Now what? I'm sober. Now what? That's another thing that happens too. But everything will change. And in the program, we have this one saying that says there's only one thing that needs to change, and that one thing is everything. Everything needs to change in order to experience change throughout life. So the other thing here too that's important is this, is there's a thought that they have, 12 fears about sobriety that will ruin recovery. And the second one is this, that they're going to fail. That you're going to fail. So why even try? Right? Everyone says I'm going to fail. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to prove them right. I'm going to fail anyways and just prove them right. Some people look at their past and they look at their previous attempts at achieving sobriety or getting recovery, and all they see is failure or perceived failure, as I like to call it. And they just project that onto their current experience and project that onto their future experience. I can't tell you how many parents, and I'm not making this up, okay? So I don't think the parents watching this are the ones that I'm talking about, because they're very supportive. But I've picked up the phone. I've called a parent to say, hey, your loved one is safe. Your loved one is in a program right now. Your loved one is committed to sobriety. And the first thing they say is, good luck with that. He's going to fail. He's going to fail in no time. He's going to fail a week from now. He's going to fail a month from now. He's going to fail again. That's just what he does. Right? And that thought process onto the loved one. Now, whether it's real or whether it's perceived, and I don't even care about that stuff, right? Whether it's real or perceived, the child, the individual, the loved one in the recovery process knows that that's their beliefs. Like, they give them something to live up to, and that's failure. And I'm not saying it's not accurate sometimes. You know, sometimes family members know the patterns of their loved ones and all that kind of stuff like that. But when they're that definitive and that sure about their future failure, it's inevitable that that's going to happen. And I don't believe in failure. Jim wrote, I don't do failure. You know, I really don't believe in failure. I believe in failing forward. I believe that even relapses, even painful relapses, are full of valuable nuggets of information that can be used, that can be extracted and extrapolated and used in future days, weeks, months, years to prevent that happening again. Relapse creates a beautiful plan for relapse prevention. Without knowing what doesn't work, you will never learn what works. Without knowing what doesn't work, you will never know what works. So, it's just keep moving forward. Just keep swimming, as Pixar and Finding Nemo beautifully taught us. Just keep swimming. The next fear about sobriety that will ruin your recovery is this. And this one's the flip side of it. And it might not make sense on face value, but it makes a lot of sense. And it's actually, what if you'll actually succeed? There is something called the fear of success that people go through, especially those who have low self-esteem, those who cannot handle pressure, those who cannot have never tasted victory. The thought of success scares the heck out of them, because now they have this new standard that they have to live up to. And there's something in the recovery process, and maybe some of the counselors watching or something like that could back this up. It's called this imposter syndrome. People that lived life a certain way for a certain period of time, and now they're no longer living that way, when they start to accumulate success and accolades and people saying good job and people saying you're a great person and all that kind of stuff like that, they start to feel unease, a little bit of guilt, a little bit of shame, because they feel like they're an imposter. Because for so many days, weeks, months, and years, they lived a different way. And now they're experiencing a new way of life, as we call it. And until they get comfortable in that new way in life, they feel uncomfortable in their own skin. They feel like they are imposters. The imposter syndrome is really, really weird and really real. It's a real phenomenon. And it prevents people from truly growing. It prevents people from moving up at work. It prevents people from achieving long-term sobriety. And what is the antidote to that is you just got to let that stuff go. You got to let that stuff go, because the only way to become a successful person, the only way to achieve recovery, sobriety, physical sobriety, emotional sobriety, is to believe you could be that person. Without that belief, good luck making that become a tangible reality. So the next one we have is number 4 of the 12 fears about sobriety. And that's another thing too, that Jim, I'll put this up on the board. And I think I'm going to talk about this a little bit down the line. I think so. But Jim said, this is so Jim, as you guys know, he watches this every week. He's a clinician at Buckeye. He's been doing this for a long minute, a bunch of minutes strung out together. It creates like 18 years of this stuff. But Jim says, this is something he's heard someone say, I don't know how to navigate a new life. It's not comfortable, right? And you know what? There's some truth in that. They actually don't know how to navigate a new life, and it is not comfortable. So the fear doesn't always mean it's irrational fears. This is a very rational fear that people have. However, there is so much tools and resources of people that know the way, they show the way, they go the way, that can help guide and be like literally a step-by-step navigation system for the person. I mean, here's the thing. If you wanted to drive from point A to point B and you have no idea how to get to point B, this day and age, you plug it in your cell phone, you plug it in your navigation, you sit back and just trust the process. Exact same thing when it comes to recovery. You don't know how to go from point A and live a new life. Sit back, have other people tell you what to do, tell them step-by-step directions of how to get there. It's so simple. Yet people halfway through, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to listen to this navigation. I'm going to try my own thing. I'm going to try these back streets. I'm going to try this shortcut. I'm going to try this different way of how to get to the destination. Well, good luck, man. I always say this, the longest distance between point A and point B is a shortcut. There are no shortcuts when it comes to recovery. So yeah. And the other reason, if you're wondering, how come some people won't just sit back and listen to the directions, the navigation, how come they just won't listen to the way to get from point A to point B from people that know the way, show the way, and go the way, is because a lot of people who come to the recovery process, man, they're jaded and they got some trust issues. Not because they're bad people or anything like that. It's because those who they were supposed to trust in life, unfortunately, didn't follow through with their obligations. They had their trust violated long before they picked up a drink or a drug. So now they're coming here listening to someone like Parham, listening to someone like Jim, listening to someone like, their therapist or their counselor, and they're saying these things to them. They're giving them the step-by-step navigation, but they don't trust them. So it takes a while for that kind of stuff to heal. It takes a while for people to develop the psychological and emotional muscles to be able to listen, or the gift of desperation. In the program, we have this thing called the gift of desperation. Why do they call it the gift of desperation? Because if you open up that gift, inside there is this key called the key of willingness. If you pick up the key of willingness, it unlocks anything that you're trying to unlock in life. But sometimes you got to be desperate enough to find that key, and sometimes people aren't. So I always pray for people to either be inspired or desperate. Inspiration or desperation, inspiration or desperation. What's up, Money John? Good morning. So the next one that we have here, number 4, is you won't know who you are anymore. So a lot of people come in saying, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I'm going to be. Well, the reality of it is this, my friends. A lot of people that come to the recovery process have no clue who they are. I did this talk with our program participants this morning, and many of them identified with being chameleons, saying what they needed to say, doing what they needed to do, going where they needed to go, put everything and everyone at ease, at peace, so they can continue doing what they were doing. If someone's a chameleon, right, that just kind of blends in with the environment, they already don't know who they are. So the recovery process allows us to be able to identify who and what we are and what we stand for, right? Identify our values and to live by those. So to define ourselves, how cool is that? To define yourself and to rewrite the story, rewrite the narrative of who you think you are, because who you think you are is not who you actually are, especially if you created that identity as someone that was in pain, angry, depressed, sad, using substances, using people, using addictive behaviors to cope with that lack of identity. So the 5th one, and yeah, thank you for all these comments, guys. Whoever, if there's any questions, by the way, that you have, feel free to ask them. I'll gladly elaborate more if need be. So the next one that I have here, number 5, is one of the fears of sobriety that actually ruins recovery is that they're going to be bored. Like, I'm going to be bored if I'm sober. We hear that all the time. First of all, I don't think that people could, you're not bored, you're boring, right? And people say that and they get offended. Did you just call me boring? It's like, man, in this day and age, if you can't find something to do, then you're really not trying, right? And when people come in at first, it's not really boredom they're experiencing. A lot of it is anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff. Anhedonia, which means inability to find pleasure in things that were once pleasurable. Those are byproducts of drug, by the way. Anhedonia. But I want to kind of clear something up. There's a myth that alcohol equals fun. There's a myth that drugs equals fun. Now, I'm not going to sit here and lie and say the effects produced by drugs and alcohol for some users aren't pleasurable. That's why people use them, because it gives them a sense of fulfillment or fun. However, to the active drug addict, to the active alcoholic, to the person that is using drugs on a daily basis, every single day, they wake up, they get high, they get by just to get high, right? To that person, addiction is no longer fun, right? So in the program, we say at first it's fun, then it's fun in problems. So the fun part is just like living the dream, bottle in the air, living without a care, just feeling good. The next one is fun in problems, meaning you're still feeling good, but now your family's a little worried. Maybe you got arrested, maybe you lost a job, but it's still fun. And then after that, it goes from fun and problems to straight problems. There is no fun about this. So active addiction in that lifestyle is actually really boring. It's Groundhog's Day over and over and over again. And sometimes individuals say, yeah, but I really, really like the chaos, the chaos of it's all fun. No, it's not. There's nothing fun about waking up dope sick. There's nothing fun about finding out where you're going to get your next fix. There's nothing fun about having to pawn off things at pawn shops and going to pick up substances. There's nothing fun about using with people that you don't know where they've been or the needle you're going to use, or if it's clean, if it's dirty. Staying up at night worrying about your back and getting assaulted and getting beat up and getting robbed and getting mugged. Watching your loved ones cry one more time. Not being able to get high despite of using drugs. How about that one? It's called the jumping off point. You can't get high and you can't get sober. There's nothing fun about that, right? Sobriety is actually the first moment that the individual has the option to start having fun again. Now, in the beginning, it's hard, like I said, because there's anhedonia, the inability to find pleasure in things that were once pleasurable. But once you get that, once the fog lifts and you're able to go, I remember when my first 30 days sober, something like that, this is back in 2008, I was starting to feel a little bit better finally, and I was driving down Pacific Coast Highway, which is a beautiful scenic route down the Pacific Coast, and I stopped and I looked at the Pacific Ocean, and for the first time, and here's the thing, I live in this area, so I've been down that path many times before, but I never saw the ocean. And when I stopped and actually saw it, and I felt it and I experienced it, I was like, oh my God, that is so damn beautiful. But before that, I never saw it, right? And boredom, the definition of boredom that I go based on is the inability to sit with oneself. If someone can't sit with themselves, they start to experience discomfort, which is labeled boredom sometimes. But when someone's at peace with themselves, they can sit down by themselves and just smile, man. Just be okay with themselves. So the next one that I have here, number 6, is one of the fears about sobriety that ruins recovery is that you will lose your friends. People come in, especially the young ones, that identify with their friends from middle school or identify with their friends from high school that still haven't experienced what happens in life, good, bad, and different. There's a lot of times that that people go their different ways. They grow up. It's rare that people in their late adulthood still have their friends from junior high and high school around. Some people do. Hats off to them. I think that's really cool. But for the most part, we don't. But you tell an 18-year-old kid that, hey, you're going to lose your friends. For them, it's like, I'm going to lose everything I know. You know, you tell a 20-year-old kid you're going to lose all your friends from high school. They're like, what do you mean? This is not going to happen. But they come in and they say, I'm going to lose my friends. So what I told them this morning, the program participants, and I'll tell you family members, is in sobriety, in the recovery process, we have to distinguish between using buddies and friends. Using buddies are those individuals that people tend to only surround themselves with, and the main reason they're doing it is because of the substances they're using. And friends are people who've been there through thick and thin, right? So could you use substances with some of your friends at some point? Absolutely. You know, some of the people that I have the most high regard for in my life that helped me, you know, that helped me through breakups, that helped me through sadness, that helped me through depression, that helped me just grow up. I use substances with them, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But I'll tell you this, I tell this to every program participant. What you got to do to learn that distinction, to distinguish them, when you come into a program, recovery program, you got to focus on yourself, your sobriety, and your mental health. You have to do that over an extended period of time. And you will quickly see and realize who are using buddies and who are friends. The friends will stick around. The using buddies are going to be using with someone else. And it's important to have, and by the way, we create friends in sobriety. We create new relationships, new connections in sobriety. And again, like I said, the new life is going to cost you your old life. Some people aren't willing to pay that price. Some people are not willing to pay the price that my new life is going to cost me my old life. They want to do both. And unfortunately, you can't. It is impossible to live the way you used to live with the people you used to live with and live a clean and sober life at the same time. It just doesn't happen. And it's nothing against the people. It's nothing against their lifestyle, what they're choosing to do. It's just too difficult because there's a saying we say, if you keep going to the barber shop every day, you're eventually going to get a haircut. If you continue hanging out with people that are using substances, eventually one day when your guards are down or when you're feeling good or you got some bad news or it's Friday and you just passed an exam or you just got your heart broken or you just hurt yourself, all of a sudden you're going to get that haircut, right? The next one, number 7 of the 12 fears about sobriety that can ruin the recovery is that people won't like you sober. So people won't like the sober you. Now, this is a fear people have because why? Drugs and alcohol, for as long as I know, and I'm sure much longer before that, has always been used as this thing called the social lubricant. It's required in social gatherings and settings. And when people use it, a version of them comes out that's, you know, more fun or more spunky, all that kind of stuff. We all know that people who actually have problems with drugs and alcohol and substances, that's not their experience. Maybe in the beginning it was, but towards the end, it's a lot of isolation, using on their own, depression, suicidal thoughts, self-harm. You know, it's a complete opposite of what the media projects. It's not a Corona commercial for people that have substance issues, right? It's not like a bunch of good-looking people standing on a roof bar in a big city having a drink and celebrating the end of the week. For people with addiction problems, that is not even a form of reality. So what you got to do is you have to first distinguish between reality and the distortion of reality. So people won't like the sober you. I got a news flash for individuals. People really don't like the loaded you. People really don't like the drunk version of you. You know, that's something I learned. I used to think, you know, I used to drink a lot of alcohol with my friends. And I always thought I was the life of the party. And maybe in the beginning I was, but towards the end, people would come up to me and say, hey, man, we really don't like it when you're drunk. We're worried about you. We don't like seeing you cry. We don't like this and that. But in my mind, I always thought they like the version of me that's drinking. So there's a separation between distortion and reality. And there's a quote that I love, and it says, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else and someone else is the greatest accomplishment. So to anyone who thinks that other people won't like them when they're sober, radical authenticity. Just be yourself. When you get peace with yourself, you're going to be at peace with others. Whoever likes you. And whoever doesn't, who cares? Because what's the point of going through sobriety trying to please other people just to be liked, when we could be ourselves, be true to ourselves, and be liked for that? The number 8 one that I have here is you won't be able. So this one, so family members, this one's important for you to hear me say. I know a lot of you are watching this because of your loved ones. And this one is going to be, this is a real fear. So it's not a irrational fear like the one before that I talked about, that people won't like the sober version of themselves. This one is rational. This is real, coming from a licensed therapist. Okay. One of the fears about sobriety that ruins people's recovery is that they won't be able to handle their emotions without drugs and alcohol. Okay. This one is a legitimate fear at first. Why is it legitimate? Why is it a real fear that they're not going to be able to handle their emotions without drugs and alcohol? Because at some point in their life, when they had anger, when they had sadness, when they had anxiety, when they had pain, this is when they're young, long before this moment, when they experience all those things, they used drugs and alcohol. And when they drank the alcohol for the first time in the liquor cabinet, by the way, many persons with substance use disorders say, the first time I drank till I blacked out. The first time I drank 5 times more than anyone else. The first time I drank, I threw up, whatever it is. It's very common that people say that, by the way. Because when they drank that magic potion, it took away the anger, it took away the anxiety, it took away the pain, it took away the sadness. And it's like, they call that magic. Okay. Now, if they had some other type of anxiety, maybe when they smoked some weed, they had that same sense of relief. Maybe when they ate some Xanax, they had that same sense of relief. Maybe if they were in physical pain, they were an athlete, or emotional pain, they experienced trauma, sexual, physical, emotional, social trauma, and they took a painkiller and the pain went away. You know, opiate addicts, by the way, I've shared this with you guys before. They explain the experience of using opiates as the warmest hug they always wanted but never received. So when you start judging someone that's using heroin, just know, first of all, that person is in so much emotional freaking pain that the first time they used this drug and they fell in love with it, it felt like something wrapped their arms around them and gave them the hug they always wanted but never got. So is it really about the drugs, or is it about this poor person's experience that they had in life? So it is a legitimate fear because they started using drugs to cope with sadness, with anger, with fear at a young age. And guess what? You know, they didn't use once or twice. What did they do? They kept using. They kept using. They kept using. They had to increase the amount they were using because this thing called dependence and tolerance gets created. Tolerance means you need more of the drink, more of the drug to get the same desired effect. They kept using. They kept using. They kept using. And now they got to the point, because of the consequences of their using, they say, I can no longer do this anymore. I almost died. My family won't put up with me anymore. I have no money. I have no job. I'm not in school. Whatever the heck the story is, my spouse is going to leave me. My children are getting taken away. They stop the use of this drink or the drug to cope with their emotions. Now, it doesn't take a licensed therapist to break the news to you here. If someone's been using self-medicating with drugs their entire life and stops using drugs, what do you think is going to happen? That person will be very angry. That person will be very sad. That person will be full of anxiety. That person will be experiencing a lot of emotions at first. It's going to come and hit them like a tidal wave. They'll displace the anger on people, innocent bystanders. They'll experience some sadness and depression. They won't want to do anything. They'll be full of rage at themselves, how they got here, why they're here, all that kind of stuff like that, right? And the only way out is through. So there is no magic, comfortable way to get through this initial stage. It's going to be hard. And the only way out is going straight through it. And that's the whole point of treatment. That's the whole point of recovery support groups. That's the whole point of changing everything in life around, is to learn and see and watch other people modeling other coping skills that they use to deal with their anger, that they use to deal with their sadness, that they use to deal with their anxiety, and to start incorporating those into life. Does it happen right away? Heck no, man. The longer the person's been experiencing these things, sometimes, program participants tell me, yeah, when I was 11 years old, I experienced all this type of abuse, and I've been using nonstop since 11, and now I'm 30 years old. Well, that's 19 years. That's like 20 years of someone's life of never dealing with their emotions. So when they're 30 years old and they get clean, so it's like, I feel great now. I'm ready to live my best life. I'm going to be a worker among workers. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to do all. That's delusional thinking, to think that somebody can go 20 years without looking at themselves and just numbing out, and all of a sudden being a productive member of society. It took me like 7 years to be able to function at a high level. 7 years to get to where I needed to get to emotionally. Because here's another thing. I don't know how, I believe in this. I don't know how true this statement is. They say that the moment you start using drugs and alcohol habitually, that's when your emotional maturity and your emotional development stops and stagnates. So someone might be 30 years old, but has the emotional maturity of an 11-year-old, right? So I started really using substances without marijuana, alcohol, that kind of stuff, really heavily at the age of like 17, 18, and marijuana on a daily basis, right? With my friends, and it was innocent, but it was very excessive amounts, and it was habitual, and it was daily. So when I got sober at 24, 25 years old, there was a lot of parts of me that were still 17 years old. I didn't have the emotional maturity of a 25-year-old. There was parts of me when it came to relationships, when it came to finances, when it came to being okay with myself, insecurities, self-esteem, inadequacies. I was like a 17-year-old insecure kid. I wasn't managing my life. And some family members think when their kid comes in, they're like, they should do it now because they're sober. Sobriety is just a prerequisite. Like stopping the use of drugs and alcohol is just a prerequisite to living life like everyone else. And guess what? Everyone else also struggles with living life. I've yet to meet a person that comes and says, yeah, I'm killing it in life. I don't do drugs and alcohol, but I'm killing it. Okay, let's look at all different aspects of life. Let's look at all the dimensions. Let's look at your spirituality, your relationships, your finances, your health, how your other people perceive you, your values. Let's look at them all. You're killing it in every area. But no, actually, I'm struggling with this part. I'm struggling with this part. Okay, so we're all human beings, right? We're all human beings. The next one that I have here, there's three or four more. So some people that come into the recovery process, they have a fear about sobriety that ruins their recovery. And that is that people will judge you for being sober. Well, newsflash, people actually judge you more for being strung out or on drugs, right? And there is a thing, by the way, just so you guys know, there's a lot of people that, for example, they go on a date, right? Him, hers, whatever it is, I don't care. And they're full of shame and embarrassment to let the other person know they're sober. Because what if they don't like me that way? What if they think I'm weak? What if they think I have no willpower, self-control? What if they want to drink and I'm not fun now? And they have a hard time and they think they're going to get judged. Or they go, school settings, work settings, and they have this fear of being judged because of their sobriety. Well, they just don't put it into context that people were judging them way more when they were strung out, way more. And also, here's a news flash. This isn't just for people struggling with addictions. This is for family members too. No one thinks about you as much as you think they do. Okay? Now I get it. Some family members think about their kids nonstop, or some kids think about their family members nonstop. And that's a little, it's a little biased because family's a little different. But in general, nobody thinks about you as much as you think they think about you. Why is that the case? because everybody is thinking about themselves and their own life at all times. Even professionals like me that sit down and my job is to think about you and listen to you and be there for you and support you. When that job is over, I go and guess what I do? I think about me and I focus on me and my life and my wife and my dog and my family. And in that moment, I'm doing all those things. You're not in the picture. And I'm saying this because I know a lot of people here have a positive point of reference to me. I'm giving you facts, truth. So the judgment that we're worried about, I mean, how many family members were worried about the truth of their kid's addiction coming out because people will judge them? So they kept it in the shadows and kept it in the dark for years because people would think they're a bad parent. I mean, let go of all that shit. We're only here for a specific amount of time. What's the point of worrying about other people's judgment? And so what do you do about all that is just get to the point, to the completion that who cares? Get right with yourself. Get right with yourself. Number 10, this one was hard for some of the program participants to hear. And it says, so one of the fears about sobriety that can ruin recovery is that you will never be able to fix your mistakes. So again, in some cases, that is absolutely true. There's this, we do a fourth step that you kind of look at the resentments in your life. And then what you do, one of the parts of the fourth step is you look at the resentments in your life, and then you look at your part in those resentments. What was my part in it? And when you get to the eighth and ninth step, you make a list of some people you've harmed. And the ninth step is you go and you make amends to them. Now, most of the time, a lot of these amends work out positively, and people, it's a powerful moment. But there are many times that people go to make amends and the other person tells them to F off. I never want to see you again. Never want to talk to you again. I want nothing to do with you. You ruined my life. You pissed me. Yeah, you're dead to me. And some mistakes or some consequences in life aren't going to get taken away. And by the way, if you're into the program, what happens in that moment, if someone says, I never want to talk to you again, you actually take that as that's what you need to do to make it right. You clean your side of the street. Ask them what you need to do to make it right. If they say, I never want to see you again, that's what you do. That's what you have to hold on. And, I always compare addiction to either a car accident or a really serious war, right? It is a battle between self and others. And just like every other accident or every other war, there's always some casualties. And you got to take responsibility for those casualties. Sometimes there's some things that just happen that you can't do anything about, but that shouldn't be enough reason to not go through the recovery process. And I told this to the program participants, this is really powerful. It says it's not fair to expect others to forgive you so you can move on. They don't owe that to you. Nobody owes that to you. It's on them. It's their journey. It's their time frame. I've seen family members wait 5 years before they accepted their loved one back in their life. And I've seen family members wait 5 minutes, right? Number 11 is sobriety will always be hard and you will have to battle with it for the rest of your life. So there's some people that say, hey man, just being sober is too hard. Sobriety is just way too hard for me. And I don't know if I could do this battle for the rest of my life, right? So they project what they're experiencing right now to not only like next week, next month, next year, they project it till the time they leave this earth. That's an irrational fear, by the way. But it's not the fact that sobriety will always be hard. I'll tell you this, that life will be hard. Now, does that mean life doesn't have beautiful moments? Of course it does. Life has birthdays, life has celebrations, life has promotions, life has love, experiencing love. Life has, your favorite teams winning. Life has eating your favorite foods. Life has going out and enjoying the sun on your face, playing in the snow. Life has holidays. Life has gatherings. But life also has really painful moments. Life has casualties, catastrophes. Life has really bad phone calls. Life has financial pain, financial struggles. Life has loved ones, getting caught up with stuff. Life could have legal issues. Life could have a sense of loss, existential crisis. And life is hard. Life is hard. And it is actually easier to go to the battle of life without drugs and alcohol, right? It's actually easier to go through it without drugs and alcohol. And I like that one, Jim. Let's put that one up. Life is going to happen anyway. May as well do it with solutions and sobriety. Yeah, it's just life doesn't stop when we get sober. It just doesn't stop. All of the things that life brings, it doesn't just stop the moment we stop using drugs and alcohol. And I always tell program participants, I'll tell family members, like once you get that one out of the way, now it's like you can show up for life. You can show up for people, places, and things, right? In a way that you need to. And the very last one, it kind of piggybacks on this life thing. It's too hard in general. So there's a lot of people that have a fear about sobriety that ruins their recovery before they even start the recovery. It's like, this is just too hard. Okay. And I'll tell you this, and sometimes families say this, by the way, it's too hard for me to set these boundaries. It's too hard for me to have this conversation with my spouse. It's too hard for me to change the locks of the house, whatever the heck it is that you're doing. Family members do the same thing. It's too hard. Okay. If you've decided that it is too hard before you even try, you will find a million reasons why that you were right. Throughout the day, you're going to pick and choose moment after moment of why it's too hard. You're going to validate that too hard belief with everything you experience. And there's another quote that I like, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So whether you think you can get sober or you can't get sober, you are right. It's a choice right there. That goes to program participants and it goes to family members. So in closing today, we talked about the 12 fears about sobriety that will ruin the recovery process. And again, just like every week, you're more than welcome to pass these on to anyone that you think will benefit from its content. It's always, shareable and all that kind of stuff. I love doing this on a week-to-week basis. Again, if there's any topics you want me to cover, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I will do my best to accommodate. I love and appreciate all of you. I will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a great weekend, everyone.